Hi, I'm Ruben Saltzman, and today I'm going to talk to you about attic ventilation. Attic vents are required. We all know this. Back when I first started doing home inspections, I used to look at attic ventilation as the cause of a lot of problems and the solution to a lot of attic problems. Blistered shingles, not enough attic ventilation. Ice dams, not enough attic ventilation. Frost in the attic, not enough ventilation. I'd always point to that and I'd say, add more roof vents, more roof vents, more roof vents. Well, today I'm much more ho-hum on the topic of roof ventilation, or roof vents, or attic vents, however you want to call it. I'll probably use all those terms interchangeably today. I'm talking about the same thing. The whole reason you want to have attic ventilation in a cold climate like Minnesota, I shouldn't say the whole reason, one of the main reasons is to satisfy your shingle manufacturer's warranty. That's right. Shingle manufacturers require attics to be ventilated. Now, some of them may have little exceptions for a hot roof, provided certain conditions are met, but in general, shingle manufacturers want you to have a vented roof, and if your roof is not properly vented, the shingle manufacturer has the option of denying their warranty. So you want to have proper vents installed so you can get your shingle warranty. Besides that, what good is attic ventilation? Well, it can do a few other things, but none of them very well. One of the main ideas, one of the main theories behind it is to help lower the attic temperature to help preserve the life of your shingles. It leads to more shingle durability. And while it leads to more shingle durability, the amount of increase, the additional benefit, is actually quite negligible. I got a quote here I'd like to read from Dr. Joe Stebrick, and yes, I'm pronouncing his last name right, the L is silent. This is from an article he wrote, Top 10 Dumb Things to Do in the South. Little excerpt from this. It says, let's talk now about durability of shingles and shingle temperature. Venting or non-venting a roof has about a 5% impact on shingle temperature and roof sheathing temperature, and even less on shingle durability. The color of a shingle is more important than venting or non-venting. So that's one of the biggest arguments for attic ventilation, is to help preserve the life of your shingles. But as quoted here, we're talking about less than 5% difference whether it's vented or it's non-vented. So that's one reason we want vents. The other reason is to help reduce the potential for ice dams. And I'll admit, when you have cold air passing through an attic, you are going to reduce the potential for ice dams, but most ice dams are not dependent on the presence or absence of ventilation. Really what it's all about is preventing warm, moist air from leaking up into the attic. That's a condition called attic bypasses, or lack of insulation or insufficient insulation in some areas. Those two things are the huge drivers behind ice dams. And ventilation, while it does play a part, it is a very small part. If you have a problem with an ice dam, you should be going after those first two things and look at ventilation last. And the same thing goes with frost in the attic. You got a bunch of frost or black staining in your attic, don't look at ventilation first. Ventilation is the last thing you want to look at. What you want to do is stop the cause of all that moisture getting up in your attic, and it's a matter of sealing your attic bypasses. So this is why I'm kind of ho-hum when it comes to attic ventilation. It's not that big of a deal in my book, especially as a home inspector. However, when we see stuff that's just blatantly wrong, we do note it in our reports. So I'll talk about a couple of the things, a couple of the problems and potential solutions that we come across. Number one is mixed types of ventilation. A good way to vent your attic is to have vents down low and vents up high. In fact, that's what the building code requires. They say that half of your vents are supposed to be at the upper portion of the roof and half are at the bottom of the roof. And that's not exactly what the code language says. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the gist of it. So we want air to be able to come in, and we want air to be able to leave. Those would be considered the exhaust vents. And for the air coming in, it's typically going to be a soffit vent, but you may have other types of vents allowing air to come in low. I'll cover those in just a second. But for the exhaust vents, frequently we'll see different types. And usually when we have more than one type of exhaust vent, it's because somebody had a problem with their attic. Either they had ice dams or they had frost up there. And somebody like me 15 years ago came along and said, you need more vents. And so maybe the house had a ridge vent, and then somebody went along and added a bunch of turtle vents. That's one name for them, just traditional roof vents. Or maybe somebody came in and put in the whirlybird, the turbine or turbine vents, or they put in a powered exhaust fan that pulls air out of the attic. I've been on roofs where I've seen all four of them done on the same roof. The problem with having mixed types of ventilation is that you can have the exhaust vents, like a turbine vent, pulling air out of the attic, and where's the air going to come in to replace it? It's going to short circuit. It's going to pull air in from one of the other static vents, and the air is going to short circuit rather than pulling air in all the way down at the bottom at the soffits, and you don't have good cross-flow ventilation when you have a bunch of types of ventilation. So go with one strategy. That's the best way to do it. Another common thing we find with, another common problem we find with roof vents is that you don't have low vents. You don't have soffit vents. When you have an older home where you don't have any type of overhang, there's no eave going over the edge of the house, it makes it a lot more challenging to install soffit vents. There are products out there designed to help overcome those challenges, such as a product called Smart Vent, where you actually cut a strip into the sheathing of the roof down low, and then you've got this material that allow air through, and air goes in at the bottom and then it enters the roof. That's a possible solution. And let's also touch on turbine vents or turbine vents, however you want to say it. I've had people correct me both ways, so I don't know which one I'm supposed to say. But I'll say turbine vent. For turbine vents, I'm not a huge fan of them because I feel that because they're going to pull air out of the attic, they're not just going to pull air out of the soffit vents. Now, in a perfect world, that's all they do, but usually people put these in because they have problems, because they have warm, moist air getting up into the attic. So turbine vents end up pulling air into the attic from all available sources, not just the sources of least resistance. They're going to pull air in through the soffits, but they're also going to pull air in through all of those attic bypasses. So I'm not a huge fan of turbine vents. If you have an attic lid that's perfectly air sealed, you seal up every little gap, every little crack, and there's no way that conditioned household air could get into the attic, in that case, yeah, okay, it'd be fine to install turbine vents, and then air would come in at the soffits only. But on the other hand, once you've got all of that done, you probably don't need all of that ventilation because you're not going to have anything coming into the attic that shouldn't be coming in there. So I'm not a huge fan of them. I don't have anything against them when they're used in the right attic. My main problem with them is that they're usually used in attics where they shouldn't be installed. They're jumping right to a turbine vent when they haven't addressed all of the attic bypasses. So that's turbine vents, and then also something important with those turbine vents is that they need to be installed level. If they're installed at an angle one way or the other, then they're not going to spin the way that they should. And over time, those things can get creaky and noisy. Not if you buy the good ones, but the cheap ones, the bearings tend to fail and they get all squeaky over time. Okay, that's enough on attic ventilation. It's a quick little discussion of it, and it's a quick explanation of why this is never a front page item in our home inspection reports. We always try to focus our efforts a lot more on the stuff that's much more important. I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections. Thanks for watching. Take care.